Join us today for an action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, where Matt and I talk way too early starting pitcher rankings heading into 2024.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. Also, if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes to the channel, also gives you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, once again, guys, just throwing this back out there again, join us on Subtext. On Subtext, it's one-on-one in-depth personalized experience. Text messages go right to your phone on Subtext. Matt and I are going to be handing out our rankings soon, probably top 10, 15 at every position. Also, dynasty questions this time of year, keeper questions this time of year. Matt and I are locking back in, and we're making sure you guys are ready for, the off season with all, information up to the minute. Join us on Subtext. And guys, this is what Matt and I love to do, starting pitchers. Matt has been deemed the streaming pitcher whisperer. So, this is officially okay. I'm sorry. What's the exact title, Matt?
Pitcher whisperer.
Okay, pitcher whisperer.
If you're going to address me by my title.
Okay, so we got to get this correct. Matt has officially been deemed the pitcher whisperer, but this is where Matt and I excel. We do very well when it comes to starting pitching. Our rankings are very in-depth. They are geared towards 5x5 head-to-head categories leagues. They also work for Roto. We always try and throw our points mix-ins, but even when it comes to pitchers, points leagues are very specific. But Matt's chomping at the bit, so let's get into this. Let's talk starting pitchers. Matt, who are we talking about first today, brother?
All right, so I'm going to talk about somebody that I was touting and then overachieved in my expectation for 2023, and I feel is going to then live up to the newfound success and then take it to a whole nother level. And I'm going to then bring him in and compare him to somebody that I've always underrated for the last couple of years, and how everything is kind of the same in that trajectory of, him needing to be in the top 10. And that's Logan Webb. Now, you guys might be like, oh yeah, no crap, Matt. Like, where you been on Logan Webb? But the thing is though, like I have him, I'm probably going to have him as like my 10th or 11th starting pitcher. I'm okay with walking out of the draft with him as my ace. And reason being is he's just been so stellar. This year was something to be really proud of. 216 innings pitched, 194 strikeouts, a 3.25 ERA with a wonderful 107 whip. And the beauty part is his FIP was right on par with his ERA, which is field independent pitching, which is a stat that pretty much puts the basis on if they had an average defense behind them, what their ERA would actually be. So it's kind of a predictive stat too. For me, is how I use it to gauge where the pitcher is actually performing, whether they're, overperforming their ERA, underperforming, or pitching right on par. And everything about the FIP with 316 tells me that he's right on par with what he's doing, if not just underperforming just a hair. Now, Logan Webb, I feel, has the possibility to now, he's bringing that gauge of Ks to his inning pitch. It's getting closer and closer. Last year, he had 192 innings pitched at 163. He was about 30 off. This year, 216 to 194, about 22 off. So you look at this and you go, okay, he's shortening the gap. And I think next year is the year where we see a K per 9. He does that with that many innings, which I think we've even hit another threshold of innings limits, inning possibility where he can be an innings eater that Logan Webb is just going to take it to the next level. And if he can get even over a K per 9, it's going to be absolutely bonkers. But now we're talking ceiling. But I think what a legitimate possibility for Logan Webb is the K per 9 100% with with over 200 innings pitched. And I think the ERA is spot on. I think 3 to 325 is a fair expectation for Logan Webb. That kind of production from your pitcher one is exactly what you want. And the best part is based off of where ADP is probably going to have him, probably closer to like 13, 14, 15 pitcher off the board. Walking away with him as your one, you can kind of get a couple other positions first and fill out that roster and the bats, and then come in and swoop in and walk out of the draft with Logan Webb, and then he's going to finish as a top 10 pitcher next year. So you're going to be very happy with Logan Webb, walking away with him as your one. And also, too, I seriously think that, down the stretch, if he lives up to his ceiling, he'll be well into the top 10, more like maybe pitcher 7 by end of season if everything kind of falls into place. And like our next guy that I'll let Dom do since he put him down, because it's kind of this guy that we've always overlooked and kind of had that same trajectory. So it's a great segue for you too, Dom.
Yeah, so I'll do a quick Logan Webb talk. Matt makes a lot of great points. I'm not as high on Matt, as Matt is. I have Logan Webb as my SP14. I think he's the perfect SP2. You pair a Logan Webb with a guy like a Strider or a Cole, that's going to give you those big K numbers. And, with a guy like Strider, maybe the RA is a little bit higher. So Logan Webb brings that back. But Matt, great take on Webb. And, I want to move on to another guy that Matt and I consistently rank too low every year. But I think I finally got it right this year. I'm talking about Kevin Gausman. For some reason, he just never did it for me. I was like really late to the bandwagon, like this season, late to the bandwagon almost. But Gausman's been doing it since 2020, since he went over to the Giants. Once again, point for Logan Webb, that Giants Park is a great park to pitch in. Gausman had 2 great years there. Then he goes over to Toronto, 2 more great years in Toronto. This year, huge year for Gausman, 3.16 ERA, 185 innings, 237 strikeouts, and a 1.17 WHIP. You gotta love it. WHIP's always a little bit higher than I like with Gausman, especially the last 2 years. But I'll take him as my ace. The ace-like production, he finally figured out. He has very, very good stuff. Gausman's coming off the board so far as the SP7. And real quick for Matt and everybody else's information, Matt, if you had to guess, where is Logan Webb coming off the board?
Probably about 16.
So it looks like SP25 for Logan Webb right now. Pick 68. We need to take advantage of that right now for drafting right now. Take advantage of that. Like I said, Logan Webb, I think, is literally a very, very high-end SP2. Matt likes him as a lower-end SP1. Honestly, that's the range you need to take him in, and you'll be happy with Logan Webb. And Kevin Gausman is, a top 10 starting pitcher, so that's where you got to take him this year. Matt, real quick before we move on and we talk about a lot more starting pitchers that Matt and I either love or hate, we do have a quick ad sponsor for you guys. Guys, and we're here talking about Jase Medical. I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of life, but can we just talk about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if, any of my family, my significant other, Matt's a man with, a kid, if anyone in our lives, was, impacted during the supply chain issue, it would really be, very bad. But thankfully, we have Jase Medical, so everyone will be okay. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics used to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use the promo code Locked On for $20 off your order. And guys, real quick before we jump back in here, I just need to talk to you about Locked On in general. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with your local experts, plus your Locked On national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. But Matt, let's get right back into it. Who are we talking about next when it comes to starting pitchers?
All right. I do want to comment on Gausman real quick, and then I'm going to come back.
Of course.
All right. So I love Kevin Gausman, and I love that, he aged like a fine bottle of wine. And it always leads to my point of, pitchers get better with age. Hence why I always feel better about these younger dudes as they get older and they get more mature, they get better. So why I correlate the two of Logan Webb and Kevin Gausman together. So ultimately, Kevin Gausman, I have him ranked pretty high as well. I think I'm going to have Gausman at probably the same spot as Dom at 7. So, man, it's going to be really nice yeah, it's going to be really nice to have him in drafts during the season next year. Gausman's going to be fantastic. Let's move on to somebody that Dom and I definitely differ on, but not by much. George Kirby. George Kirby right now, I love him. I am just super excited to get him on my team right now. I have him 8 overall at pitching, and quite honestly, there's no reason he shouldn't be. Yes, there's a couple of knocks of like, hey, he's not a K per 9 guy, but at the same time, he can age like a fine bottle of wine. He's young, very young, I might add. He is 25 years old, and he could always develop this with going into year 3 of his career. First year with well over, far none in between of innings pitched in a total season, where, last season he pitched 130, and throughout his career, that was his career high the year before. So, what I'm getting at is I feel like the reason that he didn't come up a K per 9 is probably due to a little fatigue as well. And obviously, some other factors of him not really just being that profile. But at the same time, you also know that this dude's got control out the wazoo and can put the ball exactly where he wants and paint the corners like an animal. And with that comes with, a lot of being able to trick, batters and be able to really, get the ball in the right spots to make them miss. And with age and more success and strength building, I feel Kirby can now elevate. He only came off the K per 9s, I might add, but missed it by 18 Ks. So he needs 18 Ks to go up at K per 9, and then he is at that.
Last year?
Yeah. 190 innings pitched and 172 Ks. That's 18 Ks.
Yeah.
So if he had 18 more Ks, it would make you feel more comfortable to have him higher. Now he'd be a K per 9 guy. I feel like this year, with now him being adjusted to the amount of innings pitched, another full year of experience in the bigs, that this step forward is really going to be tasty. And he might even exceed expectations if possible. Now we're talking ceiling, and not the reason why I have him at this point. I just feel K per 9 is well within the realm of possibilities. And, he could be even an innings eater at a K per 9 and be at worst case scenario, Sandy Alcantara light, where he's a K per 9 and just a lot of innings. And it's just really nice to have him on your team. And I mean, you're putting those two in the same stratosphere, obviously not from last year, the year before. And Sandy Alcantara was going as a top 5 pitcher. So, you look at that. If he goes K per 9 and goes 210 innings pitched, that's a really nice season. And I think it's definitely in the realm of possibilities for George Kirby.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're not too far off. I could even see myself moving Kirby up a little bit. Right now, I have Kirby at 13 when it comes to starting pitchers, right above Logan Webb. I think Kirby does what Logan Webb does, just he's better at it. That's why I got him one spot higher. Everything's legit with Kirby. The stuff is legit. He's got a good fastball. He's got good breaking stuff. The control, as Matt mentioned, is pinpoint. So I think there's even potential to grow on that whip. You could take Kirby as your SP1. You could definitely take Kirby as your SP1 and be happy about it. Right now, there is still a little bit of value to be had on Kirby. He's coming off the board, 12th starting pitcher. Well, actually, not 12th starting pitcher. There's 2 closers going ahead of him, and NFBC does not let you separate by starting pitchers and closers. So, actually, it would be the 8th starting pitcher off the board for George Kirby. Yeah, because they're ninth starting pitcher off the board for George Kirby, pick 43. I mean, you could take him there. You could take him there and be very happy with it. Matt, I think your analysis was just very spot on. I don't have much to add besides I love George Kirby too. He's going to be an ace for years to come. Let's talk about one of my boys, an interesting name. Let's talk about Freddy Peralta. If you weren't paying attention, you might look at Freddy Peralta's numbers and be like, well, we're talking about the best starting pitchers in the league, Dom, aren't we? And yeah, I know you see the 3.86 ERA from last year, and you're just like, whoa, well, that's pretty high. But 165 innings, 210 strikeouts, and 111 whip for Freddy Peralta. Now, I want to talk about how Freddy Peralta finished the year. He started off pretty good. He had, a rough patch somewhere in the middle. I want to say closer to the end. But he had a stretch there. I want to say maybe his last 10 starts. I'm pulling it up now as we speak, where he just looked absolutely dominant. So it looks like it was his last 11 starts for Freddy Peralta. He had 8 wins, 3 losses, 62 innings pitched, 92 strikeouts, only 11 walks, a 2.44 ERA with a 2.51 FIP, and a 185 batting average against, with almost a 0.8 whip. Freddy Peralta has it in him to be an ace for fantasy baseball. I promise you, a kid who's going to be 28 years old next year, it might be the year where we draft Freddy Peralta. He's coming off the board right now as looks like 17th, 18th starting pitcher, pick 60. I have Freddy Peralta as my 12th starting pitcher. I honestly think this is the breakout year for Freddy Peralta. He just has to give you, 30 starts again. He was coming off a year where he only pitched 78 innings, went all the way up to 165 this past year for Freddy Peralta. I think this year, 200 innings, 230 strikeouts, 240 strikeouts is not out of the question, with a very strong whip. And I think you're talking about a guy that can have a low 3s, high 2s ERA. And once again, Freddy Peralta, I think he's gonna be a bargain this year.
I agree with you. The fact that he's going to be a bargain. I just don't agree with the ranking. Just based off of not his ERA or anything of the sort. It's just the fact that my guy really just hasn't been a picture of health, and 2,
Yeah, that's the big problem, Freddie.
and 2, hasn't really just been like the guy. Like one season in 21 where like you're like, okay, he finally, broke through. So like for a guy that's a little bit up and down and inconsistent, for me to walk away with him as my number 1 starting pitcher, as my ace, as the 12th pitcher overall, like that is where like it's kind of like really risky. Like you're talking like at that point, if I'm going to pick between 2 guys, I'm going to pick Clayton Kershaw over Peralta just based off of upside at that point. But you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, when Clayton Kershaw is healthy, he's definitely 50 times better than Peralta.
Oh yeah, if Kershaw is healthy, I'd probably have him up there. But I mean,
right. But you get
when
what
you
I'm
get
saying?
to that point, I mean, it's tough. I'm not going to argue. Like, if you're taking Kirby over, I'm not going to argue with you,
Right. But you get what I'm saying? Like, but that's the thing. Like, Peralta's just really, really, really like high risk, high reward. So, like, you got to feel really confident in the guy to walk away with him that high in the draft. No knock on him whatsoever. Just, I want to see it for me to do it that high. But again, what was his ADP?
Right now, Freddy Peralta's coming off the board. I think it's the 18th starting pitcher, pick 60.
Okay, I feel fantastic walking away with him as my number 2. And also, 2 guys, just because we have guys ranked that high, also aren't, we're not saying to draft them that high. You use our rankings as a tool to then gauge when you're, the end of a tier comes based off of ADP, and then you kind of grab that guy. And we'll talk about that as we get into closer to draft season. And before, I continue and give you my guy, we have a sponsor for you. Anyway, my bad. We're back. And
Now, real quick, can I say one last thing about Freddy Peralta before we move on?
Sure.
So I just want to say this. The last 3 seasons, Freddy Peralta, we got 74 starts, right? 26 wins, 19 losses, a 3.41 ERA, 388 innings, 491 strikeouts, 104 whip, and a 342 FIP. So for the last 3 years, Freddie's been pretty good.
I mean, no, I completely agree. But again, the health is a factor, and we all know what the strikeout numbers can be. So it's just a matter of high risk and high reward. So where you're going to gauge that risk out at 18 as my pitcher too, bro, I'm all about that. But if I'm okay, if he's the end of my tier and I'm trying to snag somebody else and I'm choosing between George Kirby or Peralta, I'm rather spend up on Kirby with the safety of what Kirby's been trending in the right direction versus Peralta's all over the place kind of performances. And that's just really where I'm at. Again,
I hear you.
It's earlier in the drafts. You see what I mean? Like that's where I'm at. It's early, and I tend to take a little bit more of a conservative approach because this is your staple, your foundation of your team. So
you're not wrong at all. You're not wrong at all.
And that's why you have both of us. You enjoy our little banter back and forth. But let's move on. I think we've spent enough time. My bad, guys. Let's talk about Jesus Luzardo, a guy that I'm intrigued to draft this year. I'm very excited. I feel like last year we turned a corner. We saw something, and I feel like he's going to build off of it. We've been waiting for him to just do this for a couple years now. And last year, even though he was a little bit, limited from injury and such, and also finally getting the real chance, I feel that now he's really just coming into his own. And with the full season of Miami, which is like, honestly, like another one of those teams that just like pump out pitchers left and right. This kid's just going to take it to a whole nother level this year. He had a 3.58 ERA on the season. He had 178 innings pitched. He had 208 strikeouts with a whip of 1.215. He won about 10 games this year. And I feel like he's going to build on this. I feel like he's going to hit the upside. He's going to go north of 200 innings this year without a doubt, because Miami will let their pitchers, go out there and eat up innings. And 2, I feel like he's going to take advantage and then get his ERA down to the, low threes, be like a 3.25, possibly lower. And it does on the high upside aspect, the ceiling play, a sub 3 ERA, because he's going to do at least a few times in his career where they're going to see a season like this for him. And he's absolutely fantastic. His stuff is absolutely electric. He throws gas. And, at one point he was like the number 1 pitching prospect in all of baseball. It's just taken a little bit of time to get there, just based off of dealing with the Oakland and, finally getting his bearings in Miami to now, boom, taking advantage of the opportunity. Also getting a little glasses action too that really helped it. So Jesus Luzardo is going to be fantastic and is going to be slept on in a lot of leagues. And by slept on, value aspect, he's going to be a value. I think if I had to guess, his ADP is probably about 25.
Even lower. Right now it's the 37th pitcher. I would say there's probably about 8 closers mixed in there. So you're talking about like the 30th starting pitcher off the board at pick 90.
God.
That's monster value for Jesus Luzardo.
Salivating.
Yeah, I love it. I have Jesus Luzardo as my 17th starting pitcher right now. He's very, very good. Finally stayed healthy, gave you 32 starts. I think we see more of the same, coming into 2024. Jesus Luzardo still only going to be 26. Monster years ahead for Luzardo. I absolutely love him. Take him with confidence. It looks like you can get him as closer to your SP3 right now than your SP2, which I'm loving that. I'm loving if you could have Luzardo as your SP3, but I'm not mad at him as an SP2 either. Let's keep things moving here. Let's talk about somebody I love to talk about. And if you watched Matt and I at all during the season, you probably heard me talk about this guy. One of the best names in all of baseball. It's Tarik Skubal, the pterodactyl. Matt, there you go. There you go. Matt gave him the nickname. I love it. I'm all aboard. Skubal's just so good. He was everything I thought he was going to be and more. Skubal wound up making 15 starts this year, 7 wins, 3 losses, 2.80 ERA, 80 innings pitched, 102 strikeouts, and a 0.89 WHIP with a clean 2 FIP. There's not really much else to say about Skubal besides he was breaking out. What was it in 2022 before he got hurt? And he just picked up where he left off, if not even better. The guy excels literally at everything a pitcher needs to do to be good. Has a strong fastball, has good breaking stuff, has a 4-pitch mix. Doesn't always throw that curveball too much, but it still gets thrown almost 10% of the time. So I'm counting it to keep hitters off balance. This is a guy that legit 80 innings last year. You're talking about if he could throw 160, 170 innings, I could see Skubal. If everything goes right, a top 10 starting pitcher season outcome is not crazy for Skubal. I have Skubal right now as my SP18. He's coming off the board. I got to scroll back up. As pitcher 18, pick 55. I'm liking it. I honestly think, and it's a great park to pitch in Detroit for, pitchers, and Skubal gets half his starts there, most likely. I love it. I love Skubal. Take him with confidence.
I love Skubal as a talent and for fantasy for a lot of reasons, but I don't know if I'm going to have him ranked at 18. So which means that probably based off of ADP, I probably won't have him. I haven't finished my pitcher rankings yet, so I'm a little unprepared. But one thing I am looking at is with Skubal, it's Detroit, right? So there isn't a lot of wins upsides. Now there's a lot of K opportunity, ERA, and WHIP. But the wins is also something that you got to factor into it as well.
Of course.
So with that being said, it kind of just takes him down a tier for me just based off of that one category because it is valuable. So, and I'm not going to be dropping him too much. I just haven't finished it yet, but he's going to finish probably anywhere from 21 to 25 range just based off of that. So 5 to 7 places lower than ADP for me and Dom. So it's one of those things where I have to weigh based off of who's going to be able to put me in a position for success. And him as my pitcher 2 pretty much is a little bit rich for me. So that's where I kind of would rather him be a 3, if not, a little lower. So it is what it is for Scoobs and the pterodactyl for me. But we'll see. Next year could be a whole nother year. But anyway, let's talk about Pablo Lopez. A dude that I am super excited has finally put 2 seasons together of health and has really, changed my mindset on him and kind of makes me think that next year there's going to be even another level of this. Now, and I'm going to give you the 2 reasons why. One, this year was a new year, new team. Coming over from, what do you call it? Miami, now on, Minnesota. Usually what happens is a little bit of a down year in certain categories. And then the next year, year 2, they kind of blow up. Well, I think we're going to see something along the lines of, that next level of seeing what happened with Rodon, where we always knew he was good, but then went to another team and then really excelled and was the super elite pitcher, where I think we're going to now see from Pablo Lopez. Now, the jury in my rankings isn't out yet on where he's going to finally be placed, but I like Lopez a lot just based off of just what he was able to do in the year 1 of Minnesota season. 194 innings pitched, 234 strikeouts. Love that. A 3.66 ERA with a 1.15 WHIP. Fantastic. And then a FIP of 3.33, which tells you that he was performing better than what his ERA just was actually displaying. So I don't know if he's really ever going to be a low 3s ERA guy, where I think he's more of a mid 3 ERA. But if he can get down to 3, keep it down at that 3.5, even a 3.4, I'd be really happy with that. And I think he's definitely worth a little bit higher of a pick, maybe a pitcher 14 or 15. maybe even a little bit higher because of the K numbers. And the way Minnesota looks, they might win some games next year and really, bolster his win categories and just take him to a whole nother fantasy feats. So Pablo Lopez's upside is absolutely spectacular, and I'm trying to get him in every draft.
Yeah, man, I like Pablo Lopez. I have Pablo Lopez ranked as my number 16 starting pitcher going into next year. Another good SP2, but see, this is where you kind of switch the strategy, right? Pablo Lopez is a guy that the ERA you're expecting to be like a 3.5 or higher. Monster K numbers that he can put up, as we saw this past season. And the whip, 115, 116, 112, 118 the last few years. So the whip is going to be plus as well. I love to pair a guy with like Pablo Lopez, like with a guy like George Kirby. If you waited for your first starting pitcher and you got George Kirby, and then you want to sneak back in and grab you a Pablo Lopez, I like that. I think that's a good pairing. That's what you do with a guy like this. I love Pablo Lopez. He's only getting better, and he's still super young. He's only 28 years old. But with that being said, guys, we are done for the day. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. But guys, until next time, see you.
Peace.